Well, come and well met, all my fellow warriors of light, and thank you for joining me as we talk about more of what's going on in the world of Final Fantasy XIV. Today we're going to be going into a guide for those who are just getting into the new feature they added in 6.25, the Variant Dungeons. So unlike regular dungeons, these don't have anything to do with the main scenario or any other major side stories. They're more for casual content, and you can run through them either with a group or even on your own. As of right now, we have the Sil'Dihn Subterrane, which takes place in Udal, and we are able to run into the same waterways that we once used to escape Udal at the end of A Realm Reborn, and we're going through them with none other than Nanamo Ul Namo. What is unique about this dungeon is that we're asked to choose one of 3 doors, and behind each one there are different scenarios we can unlock thanks to the VNC Dungeon Finder book. During each one of these runs, we have a chance to find and unlock different entries in this book that give us all kinds of lore. In this case, we have lore discussing Udal's history, about its sister nation of Sil'Dihn, the war between the 2 nations with the zombies that ended in Sil'Dihn's destruction, the alliance between Udal and the Amaja, and even more about Nanamo's parents. There are 12 chapters in this book, and once you have them all, you are rewarded with the Silkie Mount. So I'm here to explain how to unlock all these entries and to help other players earn their mounts, and maybe learn a little bit too, which is always a good thing about lore. Firstly, before I begin, if you do plan on running through these dungeons with a group, just make sure that your group is up to date on which entry they're unlocking, because if you just go in randomly, people are going to be fighting over which direction to take. And that can often lead to messing everything up. If you choose to go alone, you definitely increase your chances of being able to perform all the actions correctly, but it will definitely take a lot longer, though it can be done. Personally, I recommend that you take at least one other person just to help lighten the load, or go to the party finder and just put out a request for aid. Just make sure you state which entries you guys are going to be going for, and that everyone is clear on the rules before you go in. Anyway, let's start off. So, the dungeon begins with choosing one of 3 different doors. After you pick a door, you run through the tunnels fighting mobs until you reach the halfway point. Once you reach the halfway point, a hecatonary will be waiting for you. This is the same for all 3 doors. The mechanics will vary slightly, but the core of the fight is still very much the same and pretty easy to understand. Just make sure that you watch where they swing their clubs, and barrels are going to explode. Just make sure you choose to stick close to the ones with the blue tops to avoid any damage. It's after you pass that point where the steps needed to unlock entries becomes important. So we're going to start off down the list with the first door on the far left, where you can find entries 1 through 4. It's pretty straightforward for most of the fight, even after defeating the hecatonary. You will leave the tunnels behind and eventually come outside into a more open area where there are going to be more mobs waiting for you. Eventually though, you will reach a room I like to call the puzzle room. It includes a locked door and you won't be able to go on any further, but all around you there's going to be different colored sacks. This is important because if you mess it up, you will be able to unlock the door, but then you won't be able to get entries 1 or 2. To get entries 1 and 2, you need to grab the green sack at the furthest northeast corner of the room on top of a ledge. And then you go to the southeast corner on the floor where a yellow sack will be waiting. Place the sacks on the pillars and then you wait for Nanamo to talk when a yellow seal appears on the ground. This is a transporter which will teleport you to a secret room. As soon as you come out into the secret room, there are going to be enemies waiting there, so make sure you clear them all out before you go to the next part. Up ahead, there is going to be a gate on the right side and some rubble on the left. For note 1, you ignore the gate and go immediately to the left past the rubble where you will see a door. All you need to do is wait by the door until you are able to interact with it, and allows you to open the door to reveal a large jug in a very small room. After you get a good look at it, you go straight back to Nanamo, and she'll tell you a quick story about a myth of a giant urn before the gates open up behind her, which will take you to the boss of this section of the dungeon. And yes, it is a Silkie, the same as our mount. Before I go further, it's important for me to explain that you will not be able to obtain the notes until after the boss is defeated. Also, you can't get multiple notes in one run, so you're going to have to do this dungeon a minimum of 12 times to be able to get everything, assuming you follow all the steps each time. Every path that you take will lead you to one of 3 different bosses to face as well, and there's even a special secret boss level that you can do, which I will explain how to unlock as well. So that's it for the first note. Just make sure you go immediately to that little door in the secret room before you are able to take on the final boss. As for note 2, it's identical to the first one, including following the same path, picking the same sacks from the puzzle room, and everything else. The only difference is that after you reach the secret room and kill all the enemies, you will want to follow Nanamo directly to the gate. So you skip over the door, and you listen to her talk about how strange it is to see a rug having been placed down in front of the gate. Also, a little side note, depending on which note you are trying to obtain, it will have a slight effect on the boss fights, nothing major, but it will include a unique mechanic. So it will change slightly each time. So after you defeat the boss, and if you went straight to the gates before that, then you will be obtaining note 2. Moving on to notes 3 and 4, this time around, once you reach the puzzle room with the sacks, you want to get the combination wrong. So you can choose any of the different sacks scattered around you and just set them up on the pedestals, which will instead open up the locked door instead of a teleporter. There are going to be monsters on the other side, so beware of that, but the monsters aren't the focus here. For you see, there are going to be groupings of these large puffy flowers. Fighting around them and walking through them will cause them to drop flower circles around you. Now they aren't harmful in any way, but you need to step into them to earn the 3rd note after you defeat the boss. As for the 4th note, it's identical to the 3rd, only this time around you can't trigger the puffy circles after the door opens. If it helps, bring the monsters into the puzzle room to make sure that you don't accidentally set the flowers off. Once the monsters are down, simply walk right by the flowers and avoid any contact as you head off to the final boss battle with the Silkie. Okay, so that's everything for notes 1 through 4 on the first door. So now we're going to be moving on to the next, which is going to be the door at the far right. Now this is going to contain notes 5, 6, 7, and the 12th notes. 5 through 7 are pretty easy to obtain, while the 12th is a little bit more complicated. As you run through here, there's going to be tunnels where it's overgrown and decomposing. You are going to have to fight off a hecatonary at the center. Nothing too bad, just make sure you watch where the water geysers will erupt. And eventually it will take you to a winch, which will give you a choice to go either left or right. To obtain 5 and 6, take the left route, which will continue on until you reach a door at the end of the dungeon, which will lead to the boss, which happens to be a zombified Almaja warrior. Yeah, it's as scary as it sounds. Anyway, to earn note 5, when you arrive at the door, it will ask you a question, and you will choose the answer that has spark in it. This will be answering the question wrong and will seal off the door. But you, being the impatient warrior of light, go and break down the door anyway as Nanamo's battering ram. After you end up defeating the zombified Almaja, you will be earning the 5th note. As for note 6, it's also very similar to note 5 all the way through the dungeon until you reach the final door, and this time you will answer the question correctly with the fire option. Anyone who's played through the Almaja Tribal Quest series will know that that's actually the right answer anyway. Now, this will open up the door and lead you straight to the sarcophagus where the boss will be waiting. Defeat him and you earn the 6th note. Now, note 7 is going to be slightly more complicated in the fact that after you defeat the Hecaton and you reach the winch, you take the right path instead of the left. You will come eventually to a room with these large drakes in it, and this is where some people tend to mess up. If you defeat the drakes in just any order, then it will lead you back to the same door where you get notes 5 and 6. To get 7 and later on 12, you must first kill the drakes in order from biggest to smallest. So the order of which the drakes have to die has to go from dad, mom, brother, sister, and then the drakeling. After they all drop in that order, it will open up a secret passageway to a room where you will be attacked by wraiths. After you drop all the enemies in there, on a small table, you will find some incense. Grab the incense and proceed to the final room to defeat the boss. That will give you note 7. So we'll go back to note 12 in just a minute. Instead, let's focus on notes 8 through 11, and we'll be able to obtain those by taking the middle road. Like with the other paths, you will follow the tunnels until you pass by the Hecaton and make your way into more of Sil'Dihn's ruins. If you follow the paths, which are random at this point, but eventually any path that you take will lead to the throne room. After defeating the guards, a door will open up behind the throne to reveal another puzzle room. Anyone who's played through the Sunken Temple of Karn is going to recognize this. To earn note 8 and 9, however, you have to guess the scale puzzle incorrectly. So any combination will work except for the helmet and the fruit on the scales, or just activate the scales without putting weights on it will also work as well. After you defeat the golems that fall down, it will open up another door that will take you to the final boss. This time it will be in the form of a kind of mechanical soldier, a guard of the royal family of Sil'Dih by the looks of things. But to get to the arena to even fight him, first you have to cross a giant hole in the floor. You're not able to cross this hole until Nanamo is able to point out a lever beside you, and depending on which lever you pull will determine which note you get. If you pull the right lever, it will create a kind of mini tornado for you to leap across the gap and will unlock note 8 after you defeat the boss. As for note 9, it's the exact same method all the way up to the levers, only this time you pull the left lever, which will cause a giant boulder to roll down and cover the hole for you to cross anyway. That would be for note 9. To get notes 10 and 11, however, you will first need to reach the puzzle room where you do the scales correctly this time. So you place the weights of the Helm of Might on the left side of the scale and the Fruit of Knowledge on the right. After activating the scales, then another teleporter will light up at the back of the room, which will take you to a sort of treasure vault. After you slay the enemies waiting for you inside, a force field will appear over the door and you will have to select one of the two statues of Nald or Thal standing on either side of it to get it to drop. To get note 10, you need to activate the statue of Nald on the left. For note 11, you need to activate the statue of Thal on the right. So they're very similar to each other and it can be a little bit confusing. But that's where all the fun is. And finally, let's move back to note 12, which is back in the third path and can be a little bit tricky to get, especially if you're trying to do it the first time. Just like with note 7, you just need to fight your way through all the paths, past the Hecaton until you reach the wench again. You go right until you reach the room with the drakes, kill them from largest to smallest once again, and then take the secret path to the Wraith room. Once it's clear of all monsters, then quickly pick up the incense before continuing on. This time though, when you enter the boss room with the sarcophagus, you target it but do not interact with it. Instead, you will need to perform the following emotes in order with a small pause in between each one. Though if you are with a group, then only one person needs to do this. First, you bow. Then you show respect, do a victory pose, and then finally kneel, in that order. If you did it correctly, Nanamo will speak about you showing respect to the fallen warrior and will also do the same by lighting the incense. That will open up another room behind the sarcophagus to the secret boss I talked about earlier. This time you will be up against the Clockwork Knight, and he will be the final boss instead for this run. After you defeat him, the final room will open up, revealing both the way out and you earning the 12th and final note, and hopefully all you need to obtain your new Silkie Mount. These notes can be obtained in any order, and they provide really interesting bits of information that I think many would enjoy. I know that I enjoyed learning a bit more about Udal's history and about Nanamo's parents, and I truly did enjoy running through these tunnels, and I'm actually excited to see what future variant dungeons will be included. I can already see a lot of possibilities, such as maybe one for Gridania where we're able to explore more of the ruins of Gomorrah, or maybe we go to Ishgard and can run through hidden chambers beneath the vault, or maybe something along those lines. There are many different possibilities here and I can't wait to see what comes next. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. If you have any other questions, please drop a comment down below if you like this video, then leave a like and subscribe, and I wish anyone out there good luck with this new feature. So until next time everybody, please take care and have an amazing rest of your day. Bye!